Hey man, it's not all doom and gloom about the Vancouver Canucks on this channel, isn't it? So, today instead of talking about the doom and gloom that is the Vancouver Canucks hockey team, we're going to be talking about the Pittsburgh Penguins and discussing a few individual rumors that kind of add up towards a bigger picture that I think could be used to form a small narrative. Now, this isn't the first video we have made about the Pittsburgh Penguins and whether or not they're going to be trading players. We spoke at length about the entire situation with McCann, guys like Connor Sherry, etc. in a previous video. That was our video talking about whether or not the Penguins should quote-unquote blow it up. We also made a video talking about one of the guys we've already spoken about here in Matt Murray. We talked about whether or not he could go to Toronto because there was a rumor that Nick Kypreos said on his podcast all the way back in like the middle of August pretty much, noting the possibility of a Murray for Anderson trade. Just a one-for-one swap straight up. Well, building a little bit upon that, I wanted to talk a little bit more about Matt Murray because there are a few other rumblings that have come out from guys at TSN relating to Matt Murray and his overall status amongst other NHL teams. Furthermore, we're also going to be talking about Jared McCann and how he ties into this whole idea. So, first off, Matt Murray. This is the big one right here, and really when we talk about Matt Murray, it's a dual situation here with two RFA status goalies on the Penguins. Everybody kind of knows what's going on, but it's Murray, it's Jarry, they're both up. Murray's the guy who won 2 Stanley Cups in Pittsburgh as a rookie. Jarry is the guy who was better than Murray this previous season. In fact, in the play-in series against the Montreal Canadiens, people were kind of questioning as to whether or not one would be better than the other. Okay, we kind of get it. There is a goalie controversy in Pittsburgh, and common consensus says that Jarry has been better. This means that when it comes to negotiating a contract, it's going to be a little bit difficult because, hey, you have to sign both of them, and hey, both of them can probably be your starter if you wanted them to. So, it makes a lot more sense to trade one of them because you can get assets back, you can save some money, and in a flat cap world, saving a lot of money can be very beneficial. So, we already spoke about the Toronto Maple Leafs getting involved here, and the whole idea as to a Freddie Anderson swap. The idea behind this is that Freddie Anderson has a year left on his contract, and if the Leafs could trade away an Anderson, get some assets back for a goalie who they can either sign for the long term or keep for the next few seasons, that in itself is automatically better than having just an Anderson and having to sign him later on. Because at the end of the day, you still have a goalie, and if you trade away Anderson, you get assets in return. But apparently, it may not even be just Toronto that is in on Matt Murray. Take a look at this. This is an article published by Frank Seravalli on TSN a few days ago. It's talking about the Jake Allen trade and how that hits the play button on the NHL's goalie musical chairs situation. And that's a very funny way to put it, because we kind of noted this earlier on, but we do have a ton of different goalies on UFA deals, RFA deals that probably will get up and about bouncing around to different NHL clubs. But in this article, Frank Seravalli goes over a very interesting little tidbit about Matt Murray. He introduces Murray into the conversation by talking about goalies with pending RFA arbitration rights. He also speaks about Marc-Andre Fleury, Anderson, Lundqvist, Antti Raanta, and Columbus with Korpisalo and Merzlikins. However, talking about Matt Murray specifically, this is what Frank Seravalli says. The Penguins are believed to have one standing offer on the table for 2-time Stanley Cup champion Matt Murray. The Leafs, Oilers, Flames, Sens, Sabres, and maybe even the Avalanche are among the potential suitors for Murray's services, a list that may soon grow. But even with Murray's playoff pedigree and youth, it has likely been difficult for Penguins GM Jim Rutherford to squeeze leverage from teams who know that the market will be flooded in short order. So these are the teams so far that we have brought into the conversation. The Maple Leafs, whom we've already made a video about, the Edmonton Oilers, the Flames, the Sens, the Sabres, and maybe even Colorado. So, let's have a little discussion as to each of these teams and how Matt Murray could affect their situation. The Oilers and the Flames are in a similar mirroring kind of situation here, because on the one hand, in the red team, you have Cam Talbot, who's expiring, and on the orange team, you have Mike Smith, who is expiring. And when it comes to these two teams, what they could both use is a starting goaltender. A bona fide, okay, we're going into the playoffs, no matter what happens, this is our guy, ride or die with this player right here, kind of player. And they don't have that in Koskinen. They don't have that in David Rittich. We saw both the Flames and the Oilers swapping around their goalies consistently throughout the season and in the postseason. So what they could use is a number one goalie, which is why everybody was kind of saying, okay, if there's any goalie that's out there, you could probably make a safe bet that the two Alberta teams would probably be in there for the bidding wars. Which is why, if they are interested in the Matt Murray conversation too, it makes a lot of sense to me. Because hey, if either of these two teams finally got consistent, stable goaltending, who knows what they're going to be able to do. Connor McDavid could probably use the help. And I know that defense and goaltending may not necessarily be the Oilers' biggest problem at the moment, but improving your goalie is never a bad thing now, isn't it? Let's go over onto a few of the other teams over here listed in the article. The next one we have, it's the Ottawa Senators. And this is actually a very interesting discussion here because we spoke about Ottawa earlier on in a video. We talked about how whether or not the Senators could, should, or would make a goalie trade, and how acquiring an experienced goaltender could be one of those activators that allows them to really accelerate whatever rebuild, quote-unquote, they're going through right now. The fact that they have two potentially NHL-ready prospects that could be drafted at 3rd and 5th overall, plus all the cap space, there's an opportunity here for Ottawa to really get better in the short term without people really realizing it. So, if they wanted to go after a Matt Murray, who knows how good a team with a first line of Brady Tkachuk, Quinton Byfield, and Tim Stützle could go, with the added benefit of extra years of development for Thomas Chabot and Eric Bronstrom, not to mention Jacob Bernard-Docker, not implying that all those guys are going to make the team, but just for a hyperbole right here, maybe add on a really good forward or two, just from the cap space that they have, Taylor Hall, Torrey Krug, come over to Ottawa, and then add a starting goalie that can win you 35 to 40 games. That's a quick rebuild. And that's a quick turnaround. So that certainly is an idea you could throw out there. I'd be lying if I said that that scenario was all too likely, but it is an idea you could throw out there. We also have the Buffalo Sabres in this conversation as well, who, I mean, it's the Buffalo Sabres. They can really benefit from a lot of other things. They were so close to the postseason this past season, but they didn't make it. And we know Jack Eichel is frustrated. We know that all the guys in that dressing room have been frustrated for years. Who knows if getting a better goaltender could be the answer. Now, I do want to at least acknowledge that they have had good goaltending in the past. Robin Lehner in 2017, pretty good goalie, a .920 save percentage, certainly not bad on paper. It's just he lost more games than he won. So who knows? Furthermore, it's the Colorado Avalanche who are listed over here, and they just got recently eliminated from the playoffs. And there was that whole Grubauer, Francouz, and Michael Hutchinson situation. Now, I will say both of those goalies have been really good, so I don't really know how necessary a Matt Murray would be, but I guess, because it's included in the article, I guess we can go over it. We know Colorado had Varlamov a few seasons ago, and he was pretty good with them. After he left, though, they really got a lot out of Francouz and Grubauer, and it really was surprising to see how quickly these guys adjusted and became those guys. So, the fact that they're also under contract for the next 2 seasons does make me kind of question as to whether or not they would be the biggest suitors for a Matt Murray, but if you wanted to make a goalie trade where you get a Matt Murray and you sign him to a very long-term deal, I think that does have some sort of value in how you evaluate your team. Now, on to the last thing we wanted to talk about. I didn't realize that we would take 9 minutes talking about goalies, but let's talk about Jared McCann, because in Elliotte Friedman's 31 Thoughts, he spoke about how Pittsburgh is testing the market on Jared McCann, a surprising healthy scratch in the Montreal series. So, Jared McCann, originally a Vancouver Canucks draft pick, I know all about this guy after he was drafted by Vancouver. He got sent over to Florida, he got sent over to Pittsburgh. And as a 24-year-old forward, a guy who could probably play in your top 9 somewhere, he's a guy who posted up 35 points in 66 games last year with the Penguins. That was the best productive season he's had in his entire career, but I think there's a very clear argument to make that he can probably get better. It's just kind of weird how this apparently is the player that GM Jim Rutherford is thinking about trading away. I believe that he did say somewhere that they wanted to get younger, and Jared McCann is pretty young, so I don't really see the value in moving somebody like that. It seems more like a move just to make a move. But if you do indeed want a shakeup on your roster, hey, maybe there's a team out there that wants to capitalize on Jared McCann and still try to take advantage of the sniping ability that he does possess, and potentially going forward how he is able to mesh in a middle six role. So talk to me in the comments what you think about the idea of trading Matt Murray to any one of these teams that we spoke about here today: Edmonton, Calgary, Toronto, Ottawa, Buffalo, or Colorado. Also talk to me in the comments what you think about the idea of a Jared McCann trade. I know we spoke about all this stuff in a video a few weeks ago, but we have some new tidbits which I wanted to go over here. So I hope you enjoyed this video. That is 99, and bye.